Lesotho became globally and ironically, if briefly, famous earlier this year as US President Donald Trump gloated to Congress about his administration's slashing of foreign aid.
$8 million to promote LGBTQI+ in the African nation of Lesotho, which nobody has ever heard of.
Trump's sneer to the effect that nobody had ever heard of Lesotho may well have caused a spike in online inquiries, but not, of course, from listeners to the Foreign Desk on Monocle Radio, who will recall our interview with King Letsie III of Lesotho from episode 455. And a big hello if you're listening, Your Majesty.
I do tend to use the opportunity, and whenever I meet other heads of state or even heads of government, to, if I can put it that way, put Lesotho on the map.
However, for newcomers to the concept of Lesotho, we should probably blast through some basic facts before getting to grips with what we promise is a sensationally picturesque fracas even by the eccentric standards of Lesotho's politics. Last time we checked in on Lesotho in an explainer for EG, it was in 2020 when the country's elderly Prime Minister resigned after being implicated in a plot to murder his ex-wife.
I appeal to all Basotho not to intentionally misconstrue my announcement to retire from office. I am not as energetic as I used to be a few years ago.
The developments to be considered this week are, mercifully, less gruesome than the aforementioned and, happily, much weirder, and do kind of involve the Foreign Desk's good friend, King Letsie. But before we get to them, the refresher. Lesotho is roughly the size of Belgium, home to about 2.3 million people who are known as Basotho, and one of 3 nation-state monarchies left in Africa, along with Eswatini and Morocco. Lesotho is also one of 3 countries anywhere completely enclosed within the territory of another. The other 2, San Marino and Vatican City, are both surrounded by Italy. In Lesotho's case, it's South Africa, and here is where we begin to approach the thing. The thing is essentially this. A member of Lesotho's parliament, Dr. Tshepo Lepolo, is currently assisting police with their inquiries into recent utterances he has made, which may meet the threshold for sedition and incitement to general public brouhaha, to say nothing of, it says here, violating the dignity and reputation of the royal family. The short version is that Lepolo believes, 1, that Lesotho should be a great deal bigger, i.e. not roughly the size of Belgium, but about the size of Romania, and 2, that he should be in charge of it. The longer version goes like this. Lepolo's case is that the South African province Free State and chunks of 4 other South African provinces, specifically Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, Mpumalanga and KwaZulu-Natal, belong by rights to Lesotho. The basis for his claim is UN Resolution 1817, adopted in December 1962, which went big on the inalienable right of self-determination of the people of the former British possessions Swaziland, which is now Eswatini, Bechuanaland, which is now Botswana, and Basotholand, which is now Lesotho. In Lepolo's reading of Resolution 1817, this applies wherever decent numbers of the Basotho people lived before their land got taken off them by Afrikaner colonisers, and where they live still. He's also pretty unhappy about the 1884 London Convention, which followed the First Boer War, and which Lepolo sees, not unreasonably in fairness, as an especially egregious example of 2 bunches of foreign white people making decisions about land which belonged to local black people. Lepolo's position, even in Lesotho, is a niche one. Lepolo's party, the Basotho Convention Movement, ran on the policy of expropriating amounts of South Africa in Lesotho's most recent general election in 2022 and won less than 1% of the vote and just 1 seat in Parliament, the one Lepolo occupies. Further complicating his claim is that in 1964, the Organisation of African Unity, now trading as the African Union, concluded the Cairo Declaration, which pragmatically agreed to leave all of Africa's borders where they were, even if they had been drawn by malevolent and/or heedless imperial overlords, on the grounds that permitting any amount of post-colonial tinkering with said boundaries would be a recipe for carnage. It is true that neither South Africa nor Lesotho signed this at the time. South Africa was an apartheid state nobody else in Africa was talking to. Lesotho was still 2 years from independence, but both have since joined the AU and are therefore assumed on board with its precepts.
We will not contest the borders that we got into prior to our independence. That is the national policy.
Another barrier to Lipolo's ambitions is that there is little, if any, indication that Basotho people living just beyond Lesotho's borders aspire to reunification. Indeed, within Lesotho, there exists an informal civil society tendency called the Free Basotho Movement, which actually wants South Africa to absorb Lesotho as a 10th province. Lipolo has accused the king of treacherous enthusiasm for this proposition. It may just be that Lipolo is one of life's windmill-tilting attention seekers. All democracies have them, people attracted to the grandiose and fantastical, which in fairness is always much more fun than the tedious pernickety business of actual governance. Several democracies have in recent years made the mistake of actually electing them. This explainer, indeed, is being recorded with the vague concern that it may be guilty of something similar. Lesotho has actual problems. Earlier this month, it declared a state of disaster to last until 2027 to address the potential impact of President Trump's indifference. Lesotho remains threatened with 50% tariffs on its exports to the US and remains heavily economically dependent on the United States African Growth and Opportunity Act of 2000, known as AGOA, which mandates tariff-free trading terms to sub-Saharan countries and which has been a boon for Lesotho's textile manufacturers, who make, among other things, jeans for Levi's and Wrangler, and, in one of the bleak ironies in which our absurd epoch specializes, Trump-branded golf shirts.
You know, I'm not looking to make T-shirts, to be honest. We can do that very well at other locations.
AGOA is due for renewal in September. Few in Lesotho expect that Trump will want to explain why he has extended America's generosity to a country nobody has ever heard of. For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Mueller.